Time now, of course, for the press preview, our first look at the front pages. Over the remainder of the hour, we'll take a look at what's making the headlines with the consultant editor of the Daily Mail, Andrew Pearce, and the associate editor of the Daily Mirror, Kevin Maguire. But first, let's take you through the front pages that we have, starting with The Guardian. It reports that government ministers are considering delaying the end of all social distancing rules due to the spread of the Indian COVID variant. Well, The Times says the Prime Minister is increasingly optimistic that restrictions will end on June the 21st. Now, the Home Secretary, Priti Patel, has warned that those returning from holidays in amber list countries can expect a knock at the door to check they're self-isolating on their return. That, according to the Daily Mail. Meanwhile, The Telegraph has seen the findings of an official inquiry into how the former BBC journalist Martin Bashir secured that famous interview with Princess Diana. It has apparently found that he used deceitful methods in breach of BBC guidelines. Here's the Metro. It reports that rail season tickets will be made flexible from June the 21st, partly in response to more people working both in the office and at home. A host of male celebrities could face allegations of sex abuse in the wake of those made against the actor Noel Clarke. And that's the lead story for The Mirror. And attempts by Chinese regulators to restrict the use of cryptocurrency has led to the price of Bitcoin falling by as much as 30% in recent days, according to the FT. As you can see, the boys are back. Andrew and Kevin here to take you through their choice of the papers. Good to see you both. And because you've dressed up for the occasion, Kevin, let's start with you, shall we, this morning? Sorry, I just had to do it. Apologies. The front of the Daily Telegraph and their story, in fact, it's a story that's appearing in quite a few of them. Their headline tells pretty much the story. The probe finds BBC's Bashir guilty of deceit.
Yeah, I know. Look, Andrew always looks smarter when he's at home than when he goes out. So I just don't know what's going on there. Yeah. I'm a supporter of the BBC, a fan of the BBC, and I'm a Republican, but this is a grade A starred crisis for the BBC when Lord Dyson, a former master of the rules, concludes with his inquiry that 26 years ago, deceit and rules were broken, followed by a cover-up to persuade Princess Diana to give an interview to Martin Bashir, who resigned recently. He suffered very, very ill health, but he also knew this report was coming out because the BBC, as a public service broadcaster, has an almost semi-constitutional rule with the royal family. And how is somebody like Prince William or Prince Charles, heirs to the throne, going to react when they find that Diana given that interview? And people who don't remember it, and my younger people might wonder what all the fuss was about, but this was an absolute bombshell because she said there were 3 people in her marriage, that Charles was having an affair with Camilla Parker Bowles, who he's since married, that Charles and Diana got divorced, and the subterfuge is alleged to have included fake bank accounts to make her think that money was being paid to head of security of her brother, Earl Spencer, who Bashir persuaded to act as the go-between to get his sister to do the interview, that she was being followed by the security services and she was being spied on. It could have induced a paranoia, could have played a role in her eventual death. This is just a huge, huge scandal. Telegraph say it's the equivalent of the phone hacking scandal, which engulfed newspapers, sadly my own too, and saw the closure of the News of the World. This is absolutely major, mega, massive. It's not just BBC by the normal culprits. It's just so serious for the corporation. It can't be overstated the trouble they could be in.
I mean, we should, of course, say, Andrew, that of course, Martin Bashir has argued against the charges of wrongdoing against him. In fact, in the piece itself, it says that he's understood to have mounted a vigorous defence at the Dyson inquiry, but it doesn't seem to have done much good.
Look, this is extraordinary. And the phone hacking scandal was a grey day for many newspapers, and some people went to prison and have criminal records. Now, if Martin Bashir, as Lord Dyson's report says, did use counterfeit bank statements to convince Princess of Wales that she was being that people were being paid to spy on her. He was telling her that her protection officer was spying on her. He was telling her that Prince William was spying on her. He was feeding into this vulnerable woman's neurosis. She was vulnerable. Her marriage was imploding. She was the most photographed woman in the world, and he exploited her in the most appalling way. And if he has broken the law, if there's been any suggestion that law has been broken, the police must be brought in, because that's what happened with newspapers. I'm not saying an eye for an eye, but the BBC has to be held up to the very highest possible standard. As Kevin said, it is the national broadcaster. We pay for it with our licence fee. And the other part of this thing, which stinks to high heaven, is the cover-up of Bashir. There was a very minor investigation that was done. The only casualty was a graphics designer who Tony Hall, who later became the Director General, got rid of. So Tony Hall, who then became Lord Hall, he came back to the BBC as Director General, the most powerful man at the BBC. He's got serious questions to answer too about the cover-up, because cover-ups, as you know, often are almost, not in this case, but almost as bad as the original offence. So there's heads have to roll here. Bashir's done the so-called honourable thing in going off with ill health, but there are other very serious people at the BBC who've got a lot to answer, not least Tony Hall. He was head of news at the time. He organised the inquiry. Lord Dyson says it was a cover-up, and this poor guy, the graphics designer, the only person who lost his job. Yep. Well, it's a sorry day for the BBC, and apologies will have to be made. And my understanding is Prince William is going to have quite a lot to say, as will Charles Spencer, Princess Diana's brother, because he was duped too by the BBC.
Well, of course, we await to see the full report when it is released. Only the paper's getting early sign of it. But I want to turn our attention, Kevin, now to the front of the Times and indeed the front of the Mail, kind of contrasting stories in the papers. Everyone's looking forwards to the end of lockdown, but it does seem to be that it could perhaps be something of a movable feast.
Yeah, he's even more cautiously optimistic. The Prime Minister, according to the Times, told the 1922 committee of Tory MPs today that perhaps the Indian variant of COVID-19, or the variant that was first detected in India, isn't quite as transmissible as was feared. And Matt Hancock, the Health Secretary, at the press conference 5 o'clock today, along with Jonathan Van Tam, Professor Jonathan Van Tam, the Deputy Chief Medical Officer, were making the point that there has been no increase in hospitalizations or deaths as a result of this variant spreading. And it has spread pretty rapidly. There are nearly 3,000 cases now, just looking at the figures here, increased 28% in 2 days. Main variant in many parts of the country. However, it is not making people seriously ill, so the vaccines may be more effective than were feared against it. It's not filling hospitals with people who are dying. The figure was 3 deaths in the latest 24-hour period, average of 8 per day over the last week, which means that come June 21st, plans for lockdown easing or almost abolishing lockdown in England might go ahead. The Guardian strikes a slightly less optimistic tone, or more pessimistic, and saying that Freedom Day may not be as all-embracing was envisaged. It does look like some...
Yeah, Andrew, just take us, we've got about a minute before the break, but take us to the front of the Daily Mail and their headline, Holiday Police to knock on your door. I mean, I suppose we should say that this is already going on. It's just a scaling up of this, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know that people are knocking on doors. You're getting all these irritating phone calls from people checking that you are observing the proper rules for quarantine. But this is suggesting that the actual police will be knocking on your doors, the COVID police, if you like. And this is all part of the chaos that surrounds whether you can go on holiday or not, because you've got a green list. Oh, you can go on holiday to a green list, unless you're Lord Bethell, the health minister, says, no, you can't even go on holiday to green list countries. And I thought if you could go on holiday to an amber country, but the Prime Minister was very clear at Prime Minister's Question Time today, you shouldn't, but you can. That's the point. And the law doesn't...
Clear as crystal, Andrew, clear as crystal.
Well, it's clear as mud, actually.
Chaps, we are going to pause there and take a very quick break. We'll be back to you for more afterwards, when we'll be discussing a possible reason for a holiday. British hedonism is at a 22-year low. More debauchery from Kevin and Andrew when we come back. Welcome back to the press preview. Andrew and Kevin taking us through the papers this evening. And Andrew, story on the front of the Metro, which they describe just underneath the headline as the biggest rail shake-up in 25 years. But you're perhaps slightly more sceptical than I am.
Yeah, I've been reading about these shake-ups of railway tickets and railway pricing for years. Chris Grayling, known university as Failing Grayling, when he was Transport Secretary, was going to make sure that ticket prices were flexible, that you didn't get rooked every time you travelled before 9:30. What's happening in the next few days? They're going to announce a whole new reform of the pricing structure, because when people go back to work now, because of COVID, they're not going to work necessarily a 5-day week, so that you're supposed to be able to have what they're calling flexi season tickets, maybe 8 days on, 8 days off, and it's going to be reflected in the price. But we've still got the most expensive train fares in Europe. They're among the dirtiest trains in Europe, and they're often amongst the least punctual. So I have very little faith that the government's going to deliver on this. I hope they are, because I use trains quite a lot, and they're lousy, expensive, and not very well run.
Kevin, a quick thought from you in all of this. I mean, the Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, is certainly going to be banging on about this as a major step forward.
He is, because he's sugarcoating what's quite a reverse by the government, creating Great British Railways, which is going to be a publicly owned company. Will have the infrastructure, which is Network Rail now, but it'll be collecting fares and having much greater control over the entire system, which has been a complete private sector disaster. Train fares went up 2.6% this year. They've gone up 43% since 2010. The prices will matter. There's no point having a flexi ticket if you're still going to be fleeced enough to take out a mini mortgage in order to get one. But trying to put it all back together after it was fragmented and the disastrous privatisation, broken up 100 bits. Well, we've seen with COVID, the companies have effectively, private companies have been taken over. Some of them just walked away from franchises in the past because they couldn't make money. You want full public ownership. Restore it, run it in the public interest, and that includes pricing in the public interest.
Of course, we three are famed for our legendary sobriety, our ability to pass up parties at a moment's notice. So this story doesn't come as any surprise. The FT reporting, Andrew, that the country's undergoing a hedonism hiatus. Not round my neck of the woods, I have to say.
Well, apparently, people like Kevin Maguire, who wanted to let it all hang out, are now thinking twice because of COVID. That we're believing that we've got you've got to enjoy life at the moment. So hedonism hit its lowest level in Britain for 22 years. Yet another consequence of the pandemic. I'm not sure it does apply to Kevin Maguire, but I've always led a very sedate, moderate, chaste life anyway.
Kevin, are you currently letting it all hang out, which is the question on everyone's lips at the moment, thankfully?
Yeah. Well, you're not going to let it all hang out looking like that, is he? I mean, but you could be one of those people appointed with a clipboard to go knock on your door to make sure you're quarantining after coming from an amber list country. But talk about just living for the day and not worrying tomorrow. Piercy, Tory boy, lives for the minute. I mean, that's it. Got your attention fan of a forgetful goldfish going around a ball.
Kevin, Andrew, we'll leave it there before the lawyers get in touch. I'll see you again at 11:30. Good stuff this hour.